Hi everybody, what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to do a 3D resin bloom. The one we're going to be looking at is something that looks like this one here. So you can see it's got lots of depth. Another one that we have done is this one here, very similar, slightly different colours. So this is going to be part of a set. And somewhere under here I also have this version. This is the version that everybody wants to do. This is the holographic version. So I'm going to show you how to do this. The holograph is really easy to produce. It's actually produced in one of our own Festival of Japan moulds that we make in-house. So this is a handmade mould. And as you can see, it actually has the holograph actually imprinted into the mould itself. So this makes life so much easier. So we're going to go through the things that we're going to have to use. Most important, we want one of those. A cup of coffee. Very, very important. Don't put it near your resin though, because you will stick your resiny finger in there. The next thing we're going to need is our resin. My resin has already been mixed. So it's been pre-mixed. Our resin coasters take about 100 ml per coaster. Easiest way to test how much resin you need is to pour some water into the mould. Measure how much water you've got in there, and that's how much resin you need. A little bit of leeway, a couple of mils extra, and you'll be good to go. And always have something on the side extra that you can fill up should you have any extra resin. Now, normally we wouldn't have this much resin sitting in a pot like this because it's going to get far too hot. So what we need to do for resin blooms is we need to do it at a very certain temperature. So my resin has been about 5 or 6 minutes. What I'm going to use is a handheld thermometer like we used during the pandemic. These are lying about in drawers everywhere, so you need to get one of these if you can find one. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a measurement of the surface temperature of the resin, and at the minute it's showing 19.1 because it's just been poured. We need to get this up to 27, 28 degrees, which is quite hot, so we need to not walk away from resin. If you are pouring this much resin and we don't need it to get up to this temperature, then what we would need to do is we would need to decant it into smaller pots. This slows the process down, which means that we've got more time to work with it. This is just our standard 24-hour cure Festival of Japan resin, 1:1 epoxy, very easy to use. So I'm going to pop that over here. What I've actually popped it on is a terrarium mat. Now you can buy these from Amazon or any other channel where you feel like getting one. It's just literally one of these. A reptile mat is basically a resin heating mat. So instead of paying a fortune for the ones that say resin heating mat, it literally is a reptile pad for a terrarium. So that's all we're going to use. These are probably about £15 on Amazon. The one that I use is a 28 watt. So it gets up quite hot. We get it up to heat. We pop our resin onto it in the mould with a silicone mat on top of it, and that speeds up the process. So it can take sometimes 6 to 8 hours curing time off the full time of your resin. So I'll show you the results of that later. Things we're going to need to do a resin bloom. We're going to need our alcohol inks. Any alcohol inks that you've got are fine. These ones are fluid inks by a company called Octopus. I have nothing to do with this company. It's just I really rate their inks because the purity is really, really good. And every time I do a project, I know I'm going to get this very same colour. Apologies if now and again I have to touch the screen. It's just I'm having to record this on my laptop because my camera equipment isn't available. So if I have to do this now and again, it's just so my screen is still working. So we've got our alcohol inks. You must have everything prepared ready when you're doing resin blooms because you're not going to have a lot of time to start finding things. I'm going to use a little bit of gold powder in with my white. I also have a white pigment ink. Now this isn't an alcohol ink, this is actually a pigment. It's an opaque pigment, and this is what we need to form the shapes in the petals. We've got some glitters that I may choose to use, but I'm not sure if I want to use those yet. So we've got various glitters. You can use chunky or fine. And the coaster that I'm going to do today, the four coasters, sorry, are just black and white, the one I showed you at the beginning. Another thing we might need is a torch. This is to get bubbles out of the resin, but if you're using a heat mat, that's also going to help get the bubbles out. And with the moulds that we produce, they are available if anybody wants to buy one. We do a pre-made one that is purchased from a company, and we make our own, so it depends which type you want to go for. We try not to use this type of torch on this type of mould because it's an expensive mould and we don't want to spoil it. We also need some mixing sticks, so just simple mixing sticks, nothing special. A mixing cup, and I've just used a jug from most supermarkets. You can pick these up for £1. You can clean them out as well, so you don't need to discard them. We use them again and again and again. We need a couple of implements to move the silicone around. These are silicone moving tools, but you can use a cotton bud. You can use any tool that isn't sharp at the end. Again, we don't want to put scratch marks in the mould because that's going to spoil our mould. If we have cats, we need a cocktail stick because we need to get the cat hairs out of the resin. We need to make sure that our table is absolutely level. That's very, very important. If your table isn't level, resin is self-leveling, so your mould, the resin in your mould will go off at an angle. That's literally all we need to get going.